So in this tutorial, what we're going to be looking at is actually how to edit or how to add new CSS code into our WordPress website. And so I'm not going to actually be teaching you how to program in the CSS language, but just think of the CSS language like a styling language. It just makes different styles for whatever we want. What we're going to be looking at is how to style an image in this tutorial, but we're going to be using different code snippets that we have found online. So yeah, I'm not going to actually teach you how to program in CSS, but what I do want to teach you, just if you're able to find a tutorial where they tell you that you are free to use the code snippets in your actual website, how do you actually integrate that into WordPress? Because most of the tutorials don't actually show you how to integrate them into WordPress specifically. So where do you find the actual code snippets? Well, you can find them anywhere, really, anywhere online. We just did a quick Google search of cool CSS edits, something to that extent, and we were able to find some pretty interesting ones. Plugins, the next thing we're going to be talking about is plugins versus actually physically editing the theme, the pros and cons of each of those. And then we'll just look at a sample CSS project. So plugins, right? What type of plugins can you use? So the plugins that you can use are actually the Jetpack CSS editor, that you have an actual Jetpack extension. I don't particularly love that plugin, and there's also the Simple Custom CSS plugin. And in addition, I actually don't really like any of these plugins, and the reason why is simply because they tend to slow down your website quite a bit, right? And so what I usually do is I just edit the CSS code directly into the theme, and that's what I'm going to be showing you in a second. The only caveat to that is that if you edit the actual theme, so your styles.css file, is that if you edit it and then you update your theme, then you're going to lose that ultimately, right? So you have to kind of take some good notes and kind of write down what did you change before you actually update, right? So that's the only downside to actually editing the theme. But in my opinion, it is faster, as in load time. Your website is going to load a little bit faster with these different CSS plugins. It actually does make it a lot slower. So the sample project that we're going to actually be looking at is how to edit some of the images, right? How to add some of these different effects to images. And the one that we're going to be looking at is adding this little box of a border, and also when you hover over the image, how do you tilt it? You probably see these a lot on front pages of websites, and if you ever were curious of how do you actually do that, well, we're going to learn exactly how we're going to do that, right? And all this was, we didn't code a single thing. All we did was we found websites that had these different CSS tutorials, and now we're just showing you how to utilize them on WordPress specifically. So one of the websites that we found was this designshack.net, and they had a specific article. We just Google search CSS code example or something like that, right? And this was a tutorial that looked really fun. And so what we did was we just found one that we liked, and we liked this tilting one, and it gave us a bunch of code. So it gave us a couple code snippets. If you want to follow along, then I'll show you right from the beginning. Is they wanted us to add this CSS code here, and also the one right down here, right? So we're just going to copy and paste that over. I'm going to show you where we're going to put that. So if you have a child theme, you're going to put it in the child theme. If you don't have a child theme, then you're just going to put it in the theme itself, and it's going to be in the style.css, right? So we're just going to scroll down, and we'll see that we have those little code snippets pasted in at the bottom. All we did was copy and paste them, right? Literally just copied and pasted them over, and we're just going to update the file, right? I'm not going to explain too much into detail what each of these code snippets mean, because that's not really what the goal of this tutorial is right now. What I want to just show you is how you can utilize it in WordPress. The next thing is, those are the actual CSS codes. This is the actual HTML code. So it's what we're actually going to embed onto our specific post, right? So everything should really come, if it's a good tutorial, at least it'll give you the HTML code that you have to use, and also the CSS code. But also just remember, if it doesn't give you the actual HTML, everything is by these classes, right? So these tilt class, and also because we had to import CSS code from the top of this post, it had a pick class, right? So that's kind of where they're getting it. That's all it is. It's all embedded within this div tag. Because remember, we've seen this before. This is just a basic image. All it's saying is now this div tag is saying that there's a different class or a different style that we have previously made in our CSS editor, right? So we're just going to copy and paste that over, And literally we just copy and paste it in, and we have these two classes, the tilt and the pick. And the pick was just putting it in the border, and the tilt was actually doing the tilting action. And we just would put whatever image we want, the source of the image right here, same as usual, and we would just update it. And so once we update it, we'll see that we have this little tilting action right there. And so I think that, what you should get out of this specific tutorial is that, there's a lot of different things that you can utilize with CSS code, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to learn it from scratch. All you really have to be able to do is learn how to utilize just the basic foundations of how you get snippets, code snippets, and how you utilize that on your WordPress website.